Hi, welcome to another episode of Inquiring Minds. I'm Steve Harper, and with me, as always, is my amazing co host, Donna Carlin. Donna, how are you doing today?
I'm just great. And how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a great day. And anytime that I get to have a conversation with you is a great day. So let's just be honest.
I feel exactly the same. People are going
So,
to
what are
get
we
tired
talking
of
about
us
today?
this
Whoops, sorry, I stepped on
mutual.
you.
No worries. I was going to say people are going to get tired of this mutual admiration society, but it's the truth. So it's kind of cool.
Actually, I had somebody, it's funny you said that. I had somebody last week tell me that they actually like the fact that we have such great rapport at the beginning of these, and it's kind of like how people should treat one another out there in the
Yes.
real world. So I think they won't get tired of it. They'll use it as an example for how that they should behave.
Excellent. Sounds good.
See, we shifted that perspective completely right there.
Right.
So, what are we talking about today?
So, this is something that comes up a lot in my conversations with clients. The words why or why not, and when to use them, and when is it appropriate. Like in our profession, we are told, it's like hammered into us,
Yeah,
never use the word why because it's very confrontational. Why did you do that? Why did you think that? Why did you say that? And it is very confrontational.
sure.
So we are taught to say, what was the reason behind doing this, which is much more gentle. I understand
Sure.
that. And then you look at Simon Sinek and start with why. And that is a different kind of why.
It is.
I
Yeah.
look so I reframe it often to, you're doing this for the sake of what? That's the why. And to ask the why, if you can't answer that question, the why you're doing something, not the confrontational why, but the just out of curiosity, what is driving you towards this decision, or you're doing this for the sake of
Yeah.
what? If you can't answer that question, that's when to put the pause, like a stop and think.
Yeah.
The why not is, well, why shouldn't we do this? And why not? Let's give it a shot. That kind of why not?
Yep.
Not the confrontational, well, why aren't you agreeing with me? Why not? That kind of thing. Knowing when to ask yourself each of those questions is really critical. And how might it help you in learning exactly when to do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an interesting topic to explore because I actually think, when you first proposed this, and we talked about it maybe last week, that this might be a great topic to cover. I really had never ever given much consideration to the fact that just the word why has such strong confrontation around it. And often people ask it by default because they're just trying to seek information. They're trying to understand, like you said, the motivation and what was going on in the moment that somebody made this decision or responded or reacted this way. But when you say, "Well, Donna, why did you do that?" You can hear it in the context of just now putting you on your back heel, right? And it's a really interesting perspective because I don't think people recognize just how legitimately confrontational that the use of that word is. And so reframing it, like you mentioned, still trying to get to the root of what it is still really important in figuring out a better alternative to it. But maybe just for our listeners, how often do you find yourself in a meeting or discussing something with a teammate, or even asking your child something about their school or a test grade or whatever, and that is the default word that you start with, and how that may be perceived by the person that's hearing whatever you're sharing.
That's it. So, a good way to differentiate it in your mind is, are you looking at the why,
Yeah.
which is the core reason why you're choosing to do something, or your desired end result, whatever it is that the why is. So it's the center of what you're striving for, in other words, as opposed to the challenge to what you did, think, or are planning to do.
Yeah.
The other way of looking at it is when somebody says, I'm going to be doing this in order to move to this area. Like, why in the world would you do that kind of why, um, is
Which
very
instantly
confidential.
says you're questioning my judgment or my thought process, right? You know,
Exactly, exactly. Instead of saying, "Help me understand why you're choosing that," is a very different way of saying it. Help me understand, take me through it. Help me see exactly the path that you're taking so I understand and can support it. If I agree with it, obviously. And
yeah,
if I don't agree with it, please understand that I'm going to ask you some questions to clarify so I'm comfortable with it. Is a whole different kind of conversation.
yeah,
The why not is it's more playful,
it
like why
is.
not? Let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
I remember talking to a group, and we were looking at the what if and the why not questions. Like what if we did this? Because often in teams, it's we can't do this because they just walk through the door with every reason in the book why they can't do something,
And then somebody
and
sits in the room and says, "Why? Why not?" Like, or
that
why?
why not?
Why are you saying that?
That's right. Instead of saying, well, what if you could? What would it look like? And what
Yeah,
if you could? What would the end result be? Just out of curiosity, let's play with this. And it becomes more of a playful conversation rather than a confrontational one. And it works so well with our kids.
it does.
It's unbelievable. Rather than, why did you get this horrible mark? You know, did you struggle in any way, shape, or form with the content? What could I do to help you or to give you the support that you need in order to do better in the future? What might have, caused this to happen? Work with me here and help me help you.
Yeah,
That kind of conversation. It's much better than the why, because then our kids are afraid to bring our marks to us. They're afraid to tell us when we struggle because we're going to get the why conversation. Um, just look at the difference in the what's the word for it, the the flavor of the conversation when you use one as opposed to the other.
yeah. No, I think it's a really helpful reminder because even I'm thinking back just through the last few days. We've been dealing with a few challenges with one of my companies, and I know instantly I'm trying to get information, and out of the effort to be expedient to get to the to get to the end of the story or why it happened or what the issue is, that why puts everybody on guard, and I can
Yeah.
see why instantly. Not to overuse the word why, but I can see why people get very hesitant to bring or raise issues in certain capacities because it does feel like you are now inviting the Spanish Inquisition as to why they didn't do what they were supposed to do, or how, or why they weren't in control, so things got off track. Whatever the situation is, how confrontational when you think about it in that capacity. And so, we've talked about it in other episodes, right? It's legitimately training your brain to have a different approach, a different way to engage, and different way to connect. And some people might be out there like, is this really that big a deal? Well, it really is, because at the end of the day, how you're perceived, if you're leading a team or,
Yeah.
growing a company, or you're just trying to be a better parent, a better spouse, better friend, finding avenues to be all of that is is really critical in how we use our language and how we approach
Yeah.
certain things. Especially in situations like you mentioned, there may be things that you totally could support and understand. Maybe there are other things that you really wouldn't support or don't know, but their motivation and why they're choosing that path or that making that decision is really kind of critical. So helping foster that conversation in a way that says, help me understand, what led you to this decision or why you're choosing to go that direction. Cause I wouldn't, was a direction I wouldn't have thought of. Right. And again, there's that element I think that's really powerful. And then the flip with just one word added to the why not does, and you hit the word perfectly, because I was thinking it before you said it, was there is a playful connotation there. It's like, I don't know. Why not? Let's go. Right. When you approached me about doing this podcast and you said, hey, let's keep doing these conversations once a week. What do you think? And I'm like, why not? This, And it opens up a world of possibilities. And so it is really interesting how just one little turn of the phrase can completely change it from a aggressiveness to more of a, assertive playfulness.
That's it. It also says to the other person when you say, why not? That you're willing to engage with them. There's a huge difference. Why is saying, I'm challenging what you're doing, saying whatever it is, the choices you're going to make or that you made. And the why not is, hey, I trust you enough to go with this. Why not? It's let's give it a shot. Let's see where it goes. If it doesn't work, then we change it or we eliminate it or whatever it is. And if it works, we build on it and we continue to do it. So it just gives you those playful play on
Yeah.
what you choose to do. And I think that learning the why to the why not, or the what if we could, those kinds of things engage people rather than enrage them, because the why makes people step back and they go, whoa, this person is challenging me. And rather than challenging in a way that helps them see something's not perfect here and let's discuss it,
Yeah.
they're telling me I'm wrong, so they're going to protect that which they did, even if it wasn't a good thing. They're going to give you excuses and reasons rather than take you through it, and they're thinking along the way. And it's a great way for you to be able to say, okay, I see where you're coming from, and in future, for us to avoid this from happening, what can we do to avoid it?
Yeah.
And then you go to the, like, why not, or tell me more, that kind of thing. It's much more engaging and collaborative.
Yeah. And it is something I think that will take practice for our listeners and our audience. You will have to look at how you have leveraged this word in your day-to-day life and how
Yeah.
easy it becomes to be a habit, that's the default, that's the approach. Because when Donna first proposed this as a topic, I really started thinking about all of the different ways that I use it, that when I go back and deconstruct some of those interactions, how at the time and even in really in the moment, I didn't perceive it being sort of confrontational, but really at the end of the day, people walked away thinking maybe it was. I didn't, because I didn't perceive it to be that. I'm just trying to seek and get information in the moment to make a decision or solve a problem. And uh, out of my expediency to get to the end result, that was sort of my default. So over the last week or so, I've really tried to think about that and pause before I communicate and not allow that habit of why to automatically be my default. And so
Right.
it's a really powerful way. And so if you go back and look at how you've conducted yourself just this week, in the last few days, when you see or hear this episode, how many times does why just become the default? And is there a better way to have that conversation or to stimulate that conversation? And then how many opportunities did you have where you could have actually had the play on why not, so that people are sort of on the same side of the desk with you and excited and motivated and ready to take that action with you and dive into the deep end of the pool?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
It's really cool.
this is cool. I like this. Is there any ideas that you have for our listeners to be conscious, or how to maybe address or overcome the habit of just making that the default? Anything that you share, words of wisdom that you share with your coaching clients?
I asked them to start off with, you're doing this for the sake of what question? And to ask themselves that question. That's one of the questions that the reflective questions that I teach people to ask themselves. And I'm learning more and more that the biggest gift that we could give in our field is to give people a toolbox filled with these reflective questions
Yes.
that you could ask themselves before they dive into the deep end, and what I call a mink hole, where they dig themselves in real deep and then have a harder time getting out.
Yeah.
So ask yourself, I'm saying this for the sake of what? I'm doing this for the sake of what? If you're saying this to get somebody because you're angry at them and how they screwed up, you know that you're going to pay the price. That's a giant mink hole, and we could talk about mink holes another time. But you look at the reason behind, the driving force behind. Do you want to get back at somebody because they screwed up, and now you have to fix things? Or do
Yeah.
you really want to understand and enable them to do better next time? That's your choice. The why and the why not, and help me understand is critical.
Yep. And you have a role to play in those situations, and when you're proactive and you're thinking about it and you're doing that, you're asking that question, and you're allowing yourself to create a safe space to have that conversation, you'll have much better outcomes every time.
No question.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect opportunity for you to let us know in our Facebook group, for example, how you've used this and how
Yes.
it shifted a conversation around. We would love to hear.
That's the perfect opportunity and segue to tell everybody how they get involved with, this show.
Well, go on our Facebook group, Inquiring Minds with Donna Carlin and Steve Harper. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you've used and how it's benefited you, and let us know what you'd like us to discuss, because we get a lot of our topics from our listeners, and we really appreciate your input. So, become engaged.
Absolutely.
We want to start a real conversation on that piece, not just a parking zone for our talks.
That's exactly right. Absolutely. And if you're interested in learning more about Donna, definitely go to Donna Carlin, Carlin with a K, donnacarlin.com. And if you want to learn more about the work I do, feel free to check it out at ripplecentral.com. Donna, this has been another excellent conversation, another episode. Gets me thinking, gets me inspired to do something a little bit differently. And so thank you so much for raising this. I think it's a really, really good one for people to think about.
Sounds good. And you have a fabulous day.
All right, you too. Take care. We'll be back again really soon with another episode of Inquiring Minds. Take care.